how can she possibly be in a cult while having played a main character that literally breaks out of a cult?
What is it about celebrities and cults that interests you?
I have been in a couple of different cult-like groups. So after watching Leah Remini's Scientology and the Aftermath and The Vow on HBO Max about the Nexium cult, I started making connections in between groups that I was a part of and these like extreme cults that were like really causing a lot of harm to people.
Do celebrities seem uniquely drawn to cults?
Cults want celebrities. Scientology actually kind of pioneered that as a concept that a lot of other cults have followed. The leader of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, very specifically was like, celebrities have influence and that will legitimize Scientology and bring as many people in as possible. And I think lots of cult leaders and cult like groups agreed with that and kind of saw that as something that works. So cults like you will uniquely seek out celebrities. And then I think there are a couple aspects of being a celebrity, especially being a child star, that celebrities could sometimes be uniquely drawn to cults. I think that child stars often don't get to form a real sense of identity. And something that draws anyone, not just celebrities, into a cult is seeking an identity and seeking like just kind of a structure for their life and who they are. So I think child stars can be uniquely drawn to cults. I think that celebrities do often like being held above the rest. Like they like the praise and admiration that celebrities uniquely get from cults that other cult members don't always get. And I think that celebrities, the entertainment industry is hard, right? Like the entertainment industry can be difficult and volatile, and you can be a one-hit wonder and have success for 1 minute and be down the next. And so I think sometimes I've heard from celebrity cult members that have left, they feel lost once they've had some success and then feel like they need to maintain it or worry that they'll never be successful again. So I think that finding a structure that tells you that they have the answers to everything you need is going to be very appealing.
Are they drawn to specific kinds of cults? Like, are these usually self-help? Are they spiritual? Are they religious cults? Like, are there certain types of cults they're drawn to, or is it just across the board?
I think it's across the board. I haven't seen any cults except maybe very fundamentalist religious cults.
So you mentioned that you have a history with cults. What is
Yeah.
like, how do they draw you in? Like,
So I joined a cult in my early 20s. And according to Daniela Mestenik Young, she has studied organizational psychology and has studied cults, and she was raised in the Children of God cult. So she has kind of two unique views of cults. Her and several other cult scholars will say that being a seeker is one of the biggest things that attracts people to a cult. Seeking a specific worldview, seeking an identity, seeking something, seeking answers or comfort is usually why people join. So when I was in my early 20s, I was very much seeking like spiritual answers. Like what is religion? What is God? Like I was just very curious and very open to anything. And so I joined an evangelical religious cult where I learned how to be a Christian psychic, kind of. They did not call it that. That word was not acceptable, but that's the easiest way I find to explain it. So, but yeah, I was just a curious and open person, and that's usually all it takes.
did you know you were in a cult?
Oh no.
Like, when did you realize you were in a cult?
Actually, the church cult that I was a part of, I did not recognize as a cult until well after I left it. Like, well after I was out and deconstructed, was I able to look back and go, oh, that's like very controlling. There are a lot of aspects of a cult that check this box. And then there were several scandals that came out about that particular church that I was like, oh, yeah, there were really bad things going on behind the scenes that I didn't know about. Also, on top of my own experience, that I would definitely agree that this was cult like. And then I was part of a internet coaching motivation type cult that was actually kind of a direct pipeline out of the church that I was a part of. It held very similar beliefs. And that one I recognized I was more harmed, I would say, in that one. I had direct effects of like something bad happening to me. So it was a little bit easier when I was watching these cult documentaries to be like, oh, that feels very similar to what is going on with me right now. That one I was a little bit more understanding of like, this seems like a cult. And then I was able to look back on the other one and be like, oh, there seems to be a pattern here.
In general, when someone is in a cult, do they know they're in a cult at any time during it, or is it only afterwards that they seem to realize it?
In my experience from listening to cult survivors, nobody in a cult thinks that they're in a cult. Nobody that is currently in a cult would ever say, yes, this is a cult or cult-like group that I'm a part of, and that's fine. It's always after.
Let's kind of go through some of the big celebrities that have been in cults. So the one that jumps out right away is Tom Cruise. Is he the most famous celebrity associated with a quote-unquote cult?
I would say so. I would say when people think of celebrities and cults, immediately Tom Cruise is what comes to mind. He was not Scientology's first celebrity by any means, but I think he just became Scientology's biggest celebrity. And then he had several instances where he publicly spoke about being a Scientologist, which actually made Scientology celebrities roll back doing that. Now you really have to pry information out of celebrity Scientologists because of how wild Tom Cruise appeared in interviews, and the famous Oprah segment where he jumped up and down on the couch and declared his love to Katie Holmes. He had some public moments that people found a little crazy, and I think that's a big reason people could point to Scientology and be like, oh, he talks about being a Scientologist. He's clearly in it, and this guy seems a little crazy, so Scientology must be why. But there are so many more, not only Scientology celebrities, but just celebrities that have been involved in one cult or another.
Scientology seems to be the one that always jumps out, but it seems to have kind of faded from the public eye a little bit in that respect. Is that true, or is that just my perspective on things?
I think after Tom Cruise kind of made a fool of himself in a couple of different ways in regards to Scientology, Scientology made a policy and a specific script that celebrities had to use if they ever talked about Scientology publicly. And a lot of them will not talk about it. So one person that people find fascinating is Elizabeth Moss, being a second generation Scientologist, because she was the lead character in A Handmaid's Tale, which is a TV show about a cult. So people are like, how can she possibly be in a cult while having played a main character that literally breaks out of a cult? And I think I have several theories on why that is. But I would say now Elizabeth Moss is the other big celebrity Scientologist, and then all of the rest of them are kind of more quiet about it, and some of them don't talk about it at all. We just know from Scientologists that have left.
Kind of put you on the spot a little bit, but who are some of the other celebrity Scientologists?
Chloe Fineman from SNL is a celebrity Scientologist. Jason Dohring is a big one. He was on Veronica Mars, which had a huge like fan base, and Vampire Diaries. Nancy Cartwright, who is the voice of Bart Simpson, is a Scientologist, and she actually used the voice of Bart Simpson to try to raise money for Scientology before, which was very interesting. Let's see. John Travolta and Kirstie Alley were kind of the big celebrity Scientologists before Tom Cruise. And then there's lots that people might not recognize their names right off the bat. Oh, Patrick Renna, who was on The Sandlot. You're Killing Me, Smalls.
Was Will Smith or not?
So Will and Jada Smith were an interesting case in Scientology. They firmly say that they were never Scientologists, but they were frequently at Scientology Celebrity Center. And for a time, they ran a school based on Scientology principles. and they have donated large amounts of money to Scientology. So there was a short amount of time where I would say they absolutely were Scientologists, because I don't know how you start a Scientology school and give money to an
Right,
organization
right.
without being part of the organization. Will and Jada say that they are just interested in spirituality. And so they've tried many different things, Scientology being one of those things.
Is there any other cult that you would say rivals Scientology in terms of its like width and scope in the celebrity world?
Um, Possibly different yoga cults. There was a time in like the mid to late 2000s, I would say, where Kundalini yoga, or even like early 2010s, where Kundalini yoga was a big trend in Hollywood. And there were tons of celebrities that joined a specific Kundalini yoga studio that was run in a very cult-like way. So it's not necessarily the yoga that's culty, it's the control and manipulation and coercion tactics of the leader that made it a cult. And that one harmed its employees and exploited a lot of people for their labor and just lied a lot about what they did and what they would help you with. So those celebrities weren't, I don't think, as bought in as you have to be with Scientology. It's something that they could participate in more casually, and it was more the employees and the regular members that were in more of a closed system, if that makes sense. But there were tons that did participate in that for a while.
Is that Guru Jugget or Guru
Yes.
Jegget or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gwyneth Paltrow. Is she in a cult? Because every time I see some of the goop stuff that she seems to be doing is like, that's a little something.
Yes. So I don't think, as far as I know, that Gwyneth Paltrow is in any specific cult. I would consider her a culty person, like a culty celebrity. I think she uses, well intentioned or not, a lot of tactics of coercion to sell products that can be harmful. I think she uses a lot of false science and emotional marketing to sell goop things that have harmed people that she either ignores or promotes as something that it's clearly not or has no scientific backing to do. She's more of like a snake oil salesman.
Yeah, maybe not a cult, but it's like a little bit, not a cult, but you're doing something over there.
And it's still very cult like because it uses the same tactics that a cult leader would. And she's promoted products that have been cult like startups or have been created by cult like leaders. So she, to me, like pushes cults on people while not ever like committing to anything intense herself, like Scientology or even, well, she did go to Rama Institute with Guru Jagat. She was part of that Kundalini yoga thing. So she's like a dabbler and a snake oil salesman.
When any of them are kind of, I'll just use the word exposed for being in a cult or it finds out, does it seem to affect their public image? Does it affect their careers at all?
I don't think so. Because cults are, I think, a relatively new trend for people to be interested in. Cult documentaries have really exploded over the last 10 years, and people find them fascinating. But because of our culture in America, our freedom of religion, just several things, I don't think it affects people the way that they think it does. Like, I don't think it affects celebrities. Obviously, several people have said Gwyneth Paltrow is promoting harmful products and she's doing great. Like her company's doing well. She's not been canceled. She's not been, I don't think, affected majorly. And perhaps there's no way to say for sure. Maybe she would be doing way better if people didn't say anything about it. But I think that most celebrity cult members do just fine because people either don't know what it is or don't fully understand it or think that they have the right to believe whatever they want, which is, I agree with. I think beliefs and cults are two different things. So I think only for like the niche audience that understands what it means to be a celebrity cult member does it ever affect their career.
But a person who faced like real life consequences in the sense that like, oh, they ended up in jail. Allison Mack.
Allison Mack faced real world consequences because I think she participated in the cult more so than most celebrities do. Celebrities inside of a cult are treated entirely differently than regular practicing cult members. They are given they're given a pass to do basically whatever they want because they're important to the cult or the cult leader. So they're not held to the same standards, is what I'm getting at. But Allison Mack participated so fully and was so devoted and committed to it that she perpetuated harm on other people way more than just being a celebrity that's promoting a thing or being a celebrity that's making a group look okay when it's actually causing harm behind the scenes. She partook in the harm behind the scenes, which is why she ended up going to jail for it.
Miley Cyrus.
So Miley Cyrus was rumored to be in a self-help cult for a while and then did make a statement saying that she was not part of that cult. Again, who knows how involved she was. She was photographed at events that the cult held. And then she was also photographed very often with a like a group leader or a coach within the self-help group. She was going out with her all the time, photographed doing all like just anything with her, like they were great friends. So she was rumored to be part of, oh gosh, what was that one called? It slipped my mind. I'll have to look it up. But it was a self-help cult that she later denied.
Modern Mystery School?
Yes, that is it.
The name of it was Modern Mystery School?
Yes. So she went to a seminar for Modern Mystery School. Modern Mystery School, it jogged my memory, is a metaphysical self-help group. So they're very into manifestation and being like the driver of your own life, your own destiny. And the leader of that cult did some heinous things to people that were in it. And there are a couple of Vice articles and Vice podcasts about him specifically. People have done really intense deep dives into him as a cult leader, and the harms were pretty significant. But she, once people started saying, I think she's attending these seminars and is seen with this coach, she very quickly distanced herself from it. So we may never know to what extent she was involved, but hopefully not very much anymore.
Yeah. Does it always seem to go bad? Like in any of these times where a celebrity is involved in a cult, does it ultimately always seem to go bad at some point? Or sometimes they just in a cult and like, they're just in a cult?
I think this question can also be framed as, are there any good cults? Like are there any cults that just don't go bad? And I think cults exist on a spectrum of harm and coercion and control and influence. Some are worse than others, but I don't think coercing or manipulating people is ever a good thing. I do think celebrities could be part of cults that aren't as bad as other cults, but I do think that they always will follow a trajectory of some level of harm that I would not consider good.
You know, we always hear about both celebrities and regular people's stories about how they were pretty involved in the cult and then they realized that this was going negatively. Mm-hmm. Are there any celebrity stories where they were in it for a short time and then they got out? Somebody who noticed really early.
I don't know if there ever is someone who has talked about that a lot, because I think that celebrities that do things like that often want to like brush it under the rug and not talk about the bad thing that they were involved in. I do think there are several Scientology celebrities that have left Scientology and either speak out against it or don't. Jason Begay, he's on like Chicago PD. I think he joined Scientology like as an adult, wasn't raised in it, joined and then left once he realized it was bad. But that was like a 10-year process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually they participate to some extent because you join a cult slowly over time. If you knew how bad it was from the jump, the cult wouldn't be very successful.
This is one that I'm interested in. Jared Leto.
He's an
That
interesting
to me
character.
is like, what is going on there? Is he in a cult? Is he the leader of a cult? There seems to be a lot.
I ask myself that question all the time. He is a fascinating character, and I think a better example of celebrity fandoms as cults. I think that celebrities themselves can intentionally or unintentionally be like cult leaders. And Jared Leto did like a whole fake experience where he had a concert like on a deserted island. Is it 30 Seconds to Mars?
Yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah,
the
yeah.
band that, yeah. They did like an experience on an island and called it a cult and like wore robes, made everybody wear white and like did this fake cult thing. But I think if you're coercing people and being weird about cultiness, how fake was it? Like maybe it was just a cult for a time and then it wasn't. And he's very weird. But I think he has a cult like fandom and just does wacky, kooky things. And it seems like one of those people that's up for anything. And I would liken him more to Gwyneth Paltrow, only somehow more extreme than her. And is just someone that I always have my eyes on that I'm like, you're doing something unsavory. And I'm waiting for you to do a full blown cult.
Yeah, like how does somebody like that keep getting work when everybody is kind of like, there's something odd there,
I don't
but
know.
yet,
Some people, especially I think male actors, get away with a lot and still somehow continue to have work. The entertainment industry as a whole can be considered a cult. I think a lot of the work environments and just a lot of the way that it's structured can be very coercive. I think there's a lot of things that have been exposed. People behind the scenes aren't always safe people or careful people. And a lot of times people don't care. There'll be someone who's probably just as bad, willing to give people work no matter what.
that is the truth. As long as there's
Mhm.
money involved, there will be somebody
Yeah.
else involved.
Russell Brand is another person that I think is similar to like Jared Leto. Like he's odd and he's like for a long time people thought he was just odd and now all of this stuff is coming out that he's like a horribly abusive, like aggressive, violent man. So that's kind of why I have my eye on Jared Leto because I'm like I've seen some similarities there and I just don't trust it.
Are you ready for some harder slash listener submitted questions?
Yeah.
What do you think is the most dangerous cult?
Apocalyptic death cults that end in massacre probably would be the worst. There's been a few of them, and any apocalyptic cult can trend that way. There are a lot of extreme forms of Mormonism, like the LDS Church, people that have branched off, not even just the FLDS, but there have been people that have branched off of those belief systems that have had even more intense apocalyptic views that have ended terribly. I think, have you heard of like Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell?
No.
Lori Vallow killed her own children and buried them in her backyard because she thought they were aliens and had been like infiltrated by aliens in their bodies and she thought she was saving them. But I don't know if you can quantify like how dangerous cults are because some cults don't end in death, but there's a lot of like horrible sex crimes or horrible crimes against children that happen. And they exist on a spectrum. So, like, not all of them are going to have those horrible, horrible things. But I would consider death cults and anything that harms children to be the worst of the worst. And there are so many, I don't even know where to start.
What celebrity cult experience are you most fascinated by?
I think probably Elizabeth Moss and her being the main character that fights against a cult while having been raised as a second generation cult member that is quite committed to the cult that she is in.
Who are you kind of watching now?
I'm watching Justin Bieber a little bit to see how his life and career goes from here, being raised as a child star. And I think that he's been harmed a lot as a child star. And he currently is part of an evangelical cult cult-like church, very similar to the one that I left. And so I'm kind of watching him to see if he deconstructs and heals from that, or if he goes deeper and deeper in, and what kind of happens to him and the rest of his career, and if he ever comes out about some of the harms that have happened to him that people speculate about.
Does this seem to be getting worse or better? Like, are you hearing about more celebrities in cults, or is it kind of starting to fade?
I would say it's getting worse, just because in general, I think cults are so prevalent in America right now, and cults thrive in times of unrest and times of uncertainty. And I think we've been living through so many unprecedented times lately. And as a society, we are extremely divided politically, and just with a lot of big topics that are happening in the world right now. So during times of unrest or uncertainty or extremism, either way, or extreme division, cults thrive in that environment.
Do cults mainly seem to be associated with B and C list celebrities? Like, is it usually kind of the TV show actors, et cetera, or are there A-listers, we just don't know it?
I think most A-listers have participated in some cults before. I think that they hide it more because from a PR standpoint, it's better to just not even address it, like not talk about those things. So I think A-listers are less likely to talk about it, whereas B-listers and C-listers, I think, are just more open about it because it's not, they probably don't have the same team telling them, hey,
Yeah.
don't talk about this. That might not be a good idea. Or they just don't care, or they're more involved in their cult because their career isn't as big. They feel like they need the cult to further the career, and so they'll be more dedicated. There could be a lot of things, but I do think A-listers have dabbled. Sabrina Carpenter, I've heard, this is a rumor. This is allegedly, but I have heard that Sabrina Carpenter did try Scientology because her aunt is Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson. So I heard from someone who left Scientology that Sabrina Carpenter did come into Scientology's Celebrity Center one day to try it and ultimately decided it wasn't for her. So whether that was to appease familial connections or if it's even true or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do think that A-listers participate, try, are just as attracted to them as anyone else. But I think they have teams that are much more wanting them to be much more careful with how they talk about it.